So I was scrolling to my email the other day and I saw a newsletter concerning MCP in general and how it has revolutionized the AI space. And someone from Cisco did a write up on like the security aspect of it, like what it entails, like what are the new focuses that you have to put in place, like a security person, like the people that work on these platforms. And I was going further and like got into this like rabbit hole. A question just popped into my head. I'm like, a lot of people, especially developers, I think my target is for developers. A lot of developers can't seem to differentiate between authorization and authentication. And it's mind boggling. Like, ask yourself that question. Like, can you really differentiate between authorization and authentication? And even if you do, how well do you do that representation in your mind and translate it to code? For those of you that don't know, authentication simply implies figuring out who you are. It just takes in the most common things like taking a username and a password, you're taking a cookie in a HTTP request, or you're taking like a federated identity in like form of like a trusted party like Google Auth, those kind of things. Then authorization is figuring out what the user is allowed to do within the application. And one very common way of establishing authorization within the system is access control. And the most common one that is being used is role-based access control. Now, role-based access control like takes three entities: subjects, roles, and permissions. That is the user, the role, that is like the collection of permissions, and permission itself, which is like actions that are being granted towards certain resources within the application. Role-based access control, like RBAC for sure, just allows application builders to like group permissions into roles so that they are very familiar with the users of the software, that makes it very, very, very popular. Now, example is like you have an application now, you have an admin role. Like if you have an admin role, it means that you can perform basically most or even all actions against the resources inside the application. Then if you have like just a normal user, they might be able to perform like one or two things, like in terms of accessing the resources within it, but they cannot like you cannot be allowed to alter or sort of like delete certain things. That's RBAC in a nutshell. Now, what does that mean? It means that at every step, every protected route like will require like a specific permission, and the system has to match the user's base permission according to their role with the required route permission, so that this kind of thing now can happen in your middleware or in like your control service layer, which is very, very, very important. Implementing authorization is not so easy, but there are three steps you should consider. First things first, you should add your roles to your database tables for users and API tokens. What I'm implying is that your tables should have be separate for both users and API tokens, and you should have roles that serves as a relationship between those two tables. Another one, the next step, is to create a set of standard rules and assign permissions to them. It's best to simply establish your rules and permissions at the beginning of when you are making your software or your application. It's very, very, very useful so that you can easily build on them. And also, it's a good thing now to verify that the permissions granted via those rules to the users match permissions assigned to a given route. I really love this approach. It's very simple yet so effective. It follows a structured layer. It stores your roles in the database, assigns permissions to those roles, then it checks for those permissions dynamically by assessing it before every route that is being put in place. So it makes it very scalable while keeping the implementation manageable and maintainable at the same time, which is not something that is very easy to obtain.